The water of Lake Huron did not just rise, it ran in monstrous, chaotic peaks, colliding from opposite directions under a sky blackened by screaming 90-mile-an-hour winds. On the afternoon of November 9, 1913, the captain of the massive steel freighter Charles S. Price made a desperate, final decision to turn his 504-foot ship around and run for the safety of the St. Clair River. He never made it. But the true horror wouldn't be realized until days later, when a giant, unidentified steel hull was found floating upside down in the frozen wastes of the lake. And miles away, frozen bodies began washing ashore, wearing lifebelts from a completely different ship. Welcome back. Tonight, we retrace the terrifying days of November 1913, when the Great Lakes became an inescapable icy trap. By November 1913, the shipping season on the Great Lakes was nearing its highly profitable, high-stakes end. Sailors knew the risks of late autumn transit, but the sheer size of the modern steel freighters, some stretching over 500 feet long, gave crews a sense of absolute security. These vessels were designed to withstand the temperamental inland seas. Among those preparing for their final runs of the season was Captain John Johnston of the Charles S. Price. Johnston was a seasoned, highly respected mariner, known for his careful navigation. His crew, including a young wheelsman named Arzino Lyle, was eager to complete this final journey and return home to their families for the winter. The Price was laden with thousands of tons of coal, departing from Ashtabula, Ohio, bound for the far reaches of Lake Superior. At the same time, another modern giant, the Regina, commanded by Captain Edward McConkie, was navigating the same waters. McConkie was a young, ambitious captain, carrying a diverse cargo of package freight. As these ships steamed out into the deep waters, the weather forecasts predicted a standard, late-season storm. It was nothing these veteran captains hadn't seen before. They trusted the steel beneath their feet. But a rare, catastrophic meteorological event was quietly aligning over the American Midwest. Two massive storm fronts preparing to collide directly over the lakes. The trouble began on Thursday, November 6th, as a bitter cold wave from Canada swept southward, clashing with a warm, moisture-heavy low-pressure system moving up from the Gulf of Mexico. By Friday, the wind on Lake Superior had whipped up to gale force, forcing several ships to seek shelter. Yet the true monster of the storm was still gathering strength, moving with unpredictable speed toward Lake Huron. On Sunday morning, November 9th, the barometer fell at a rate that stunned veteran weather observers. The two storm systems merged, creating an unprecedented extratropical cyclone, a hurricane of blinding snow, sub-zero temperatures, and erratic, shifting winds. As the afternoon progressed, the wind on Lake Huron suddenly shifted. It had been blowing fiercely from the south, but it abruptly veered to the north-northeast, instantly violently opposing the massive waves it had just spent hours building. The result was a chaotic, unpredictable sea state. Giant, pyramidal waves, some reaching over 35 feet in height, began battering the ships from multiple angles simultaneously. The wind was blowing a gale, and the snow was so thick you couldn't see the length of the boat. A surviving captain from a nearby vessel later recalled, "The seas were coming from 3 directions at once, throwing us about like a piece of driftwood." Visibility dropped to near zero in a blinding, whiteout blizzard. Spray from the towering waves froze instantly upon hitting the ships. Within hours, vessels were weighed down by hundreds of tons of solid ice, dragging them lower into the water and rendering their steering gear sluggish. The Charles S. Price and the Regina were caught in the very epicenter of this white hell. On shore, people could hear the distant, desperate wails of foghorns out on the lake, crying out for help that could not possibly come. By Monday morning, November 10th, the wind began to subside, revealing a scene of utter devastation along the Canadian shoreline of Lake Huron. The beaches were littered with shattered timbers, cargo, and frozen ice-encrusted wreckage. Then came the grim discoveries. Search parties patrolling the snow-covered beaches near Port Franks, Ontario, began finding bodies washed ashore. All of them were frozen solid, their faces encased in masks of ice. As rescuers began retrieving the bodies, they noticed something deeply unsettling. Several crew members from the Charles S. Price, identifiable by their personal effects and papers, were wearing life jackets, clearly marked with the name of another ship, the Regina.
How was this possible? The two ships had been miles apart when the storm peaked. Meanwhile, 8 miles north of Port Huron, sailors spotted a massive, ghostly shape rising from the water. A giant steel freighter was floating completely upside down, its bow pointing toward the sky, its stern submerged. No name was visible on the exposed hull, and for days, the maritime community speculated wildly about which of the missing ships it was.
Some believed it was the Regina. Others were certain it was the Price. It wasn't until a diver finally braved the freezing, murky depths on Saturday, November 15th, that the mystery of the hull was solved. Wiping the silt from the submerged bow, the diver read the letters, Charles S. Price.
The discovery of the upside-down Price only deepened the mystery of the bodies on the beach. If the Price had capsized, how did her crew members end up wearing life belts from the Regina? Over the years, several theories have been proposed by maritime historians. Some believe the two vessels, blinded by the heavy snow, collided in the darkness. In the chaotic aftermath, crew members from the sinking Price may have jumped aboard the Regina, only for that ship to founder shortly afterward.
Others suggest a more desperate scenario. Both ships may have foundered near each other, and in the freezing water, survivors scrambled to grab whatever floating life jackets they could find from the debris field. The White Hurricane of November 1913 remains the deadliest natural disaster in the history of the Great Lakes. It claimed 12 ships, sank over 19 vessels, and took the lives of more than 250 sailors. The lake never surrendered the exact sequence of events that occurred in the darkness of that November night. When the ice finally cleared in the spring of 1914, the Great Lakes resumed their busy shipping lanes, but the scars of the White Hurricane remained forever etched in the communities along the shore. Did the Price and the Regina collide in the blinding snow? Or did their crews attempt a desperate mid-lake rescue in the height of a hurricane? Share your thoughts on this maritime mystery in the comments below. If you want to hear more stories of survival and unexplained history, make sure to subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode.